Hello everybody. In today's video we are taking a look at another piece of old standard definition broadcast video equipment, although we're kind of progressing through time a little bit, if you will, because this is a much newer piece of equipment. This is a Sony model LMD-9020 professional video monitor, and it was made in 2007. But unlike all of the other professional video monitors we've looked at up to this point, this is not a CRT monitor. It's actually an LCD monitor. We have a few of these at the station. All but one are in storage now. We've still got one holdout that's used in our edit suite just to monitor our transmission feed. But the others are in storage now, so I decided to grab one. Now, a few years ago, I already made a video of one of these using the one that is in the edit suite that we're still using. But I decided that I wanted to take one of these home. I wanted to have one anyway, and I wanted to make another better video of one just because the one I did at the station, I was very limited in what I could do because I was demonstrating a unit that was connected and in use. So this should be a much better video, and it should be pretty fun because we're not only going to look at all of the functions of this monitor and what the video quality is like. We are going to compare the video quality to my two 9-inch CRT PVMs, the PVM-9L2 and the PVM-8045Q, and we are going to see how an LCD PVM stacks up against two original CRT PVMs with two different types of CRT tubes in them. Should be pretty fun. So these were the direct successor to the 9-inch CRT PVMs like this PVM-9L2, and as a matter of fact, this PVM-9L2 was the direct predecessor to the LMD-9000 series. There were three monitors in the LMD-9000 series. The LMD-9030 is the middle model. The base model, the LMD-9020, has composite, S-video, and component. This LMD-9030 adds SDI, and it still has composite, S-video, and component in addition to that. So this really is the ultimate PVM because no 9-inch PVM had all four of those inputs. This guy does. And then the high-end model of the series was the LMD-9020. Which its upgrades were it could accept HD SDI, so it could accept a high definition signal in the SDI input, and it also had a higher resolution LCD panel to account for that. This unit has a 640 by 480 LCD display. The LMD-9020 has a 1024 by 768 LCD display. Now, although this guy is only standard definition for its SDI input, it does accept high definition in its component input. It accepts 1080i, 720p, and it also accepts 480p. So just like the bigger multi-format PVMs, this guy accepts all the same formats. This guy can also accept 1035i, which was the Japanese analog high-definition television system that began in use in Japan in the late 1980s and was apparently used until the late 2000s or mid-2000s in Japan. So kind of weird, but this monitor can accept that format too through its component input. So if we look here, we've got pretty much all the controls you'd find on a standard CRT PVM. We have an on-screen menu. We've got our monochrome mode, our blue-only mode. Marker can be selected, I think, between like a center marker or like a safe area marker. I think there's a few different ones to choose from. You can choose between 4:3 and 16:9 aspect ratio. We have underscan. It does have an external sync input, two SDI inputs, the component input, which can also serve as an RGB input, and the 2 line inputs, which are composite and S-video. And then we still have controls for aperture, which is your sharpness, brightness, chroma intensity, chroma phase, contrast, and volume. This guy does have a built-in speaker. And we'll compare the sound quality between this and the CRT PVMs as well. If we go around the back, and this guy is so much smaller and lighter than a CRT PVM. There's all our inputs. We've got loop throughs for the composite and S-video inputs. And then we have a 3.5mm audio in jack for the composite and S-video inputs instead of RCA, which is kind of unique. I made a mistake a few minutes ago. This has just the one S-video input, although it does have 2 composite inputs. And then our component input. We also have an audio out, so if you were to go to a bigger set of speakers for audio monitoring. We have a headphone jack, which is also unique. We have a remote jack that controls the tally light. We've got a 3-color tally light right there. And 2 SDI inputs with an SDI loop output. And then for power, we've got this power supply, which is actually removable. We've got a standard IEC power input. And this power supply reveals a secret. If I remove it by pressing this release and pulling up, it's actually a V-mount power supply. So in addition to AC power, this guy can actually accept a V-mount battery, which is very nice. And then, if you're like me, you may wonder, does that mean I can use this power supply on any V-mount equipment? Well, the only other V-mount, this guy takes a V-mount battery. Let's find out right now. We're not going to plug it in because this, the model number of this power supply is AC LMD-9, so it's specifically for a 9-inch LMD. It has an output of 13.5 volts at 3 amps. 3 amps I don't think is enough to run a CRT PVM. It's also not enough to run, for example, my portable DV cam VCR. But let's just see for fun if it actually fits. And I would say that's a negatory. Sony have actually tweaked the design so that you can't plug it into unauthorized stuff, which is good. But yeah, we can plug in a V-mount battery, which is great. We also have a 12-volt XLR input. And there you go. This really is the ultimate PVM. I mean, it's, aside from not being CRT, I mean, you got your composite, your S-video component, which can also be RGB, and SDI, and it can even take a high-definition signal. Very, very versatile, which is very nice. I now have color bars running into the S-video input. So the first thing you notice when we turn this on, I don't know if you notice, but these have a fan inside them, which briefly ramps up to full speed. Now it's absolutely silent. I've never heard the fan ramp up in one of these. Press our input, which is line A, and there's our color bars. Now the first thing I personally notice is the picture is a little bit dim. These do have a fluorescent backlight, so it does take a minute to warm up, I imagine, especially as these things get old. But if I adjust the brightness and the contrast, that's pretty darn bright now. That's about where I'd expect it to be. But these are really just perfectly fine. I mean, the colors are nice. The picture is bright. Looks pretty sharp. Let's turn the color bars off and just train the camera on something. There's some blue tack I have covering a hole in the wall. And yeah, these are these are very, very sharp. They're very lovely monitors, and in my opinion, an excellent replacement for a CRT. I don't think you really lost anything when you went from the CRT to the LCD monitors. And according to Sony, the LMDs are even better outside in the sun because of the really dark, the really dark filter. Apparently contrast is preserved a lot better in daylight than it is on a CRT PVM with that lighter colored phosphor. And then our aperture control. You might or might not be able to see how that changes. I know the one we use at work, as you turn up the aperture control, text on the screen does indeed become very sharp and almost a jagged quality to it. But there's a nice medium where it enhances the picture without making it too sharp. I am noticing, I don't notice this on the one at work, but this particular monitor has got some very light deterioration happening on the outside of the LCD panel, which is too bad, but on the whole, still looks great. We'll go into the menu here. Here's our menu, shows us our video input format. So we can go down there. We have a power saving mode. I'm not exactly sure what that does. Color temperature. Lower high, and there's a user mode. Subcontrols for contrast, brightness, chroma, and phase. Our NTSC setup level, gamma. What's format display? Oh, I see, the annunciators on the screen. So we'll just have those turn on and off automatically. Here's our marker. So if I turn marker on, we have a little center marker, which is good because out in the field, like if I were doing what I'm doing now 15 years ago, I would be bringing one of these with me to remote shoots. Like just this week I did a multi-camera shoot all by myself, and I was able to monitor what the far camera that I wasn't physically near was seeing, because we have a little monitor made by probably a Chinese company called Lilliput. Excellent monitor. It runs off the standard info-lithium batteries. I just ran an SDI cable from that camera to my monitor, and I just put it at the floor by my feet, and I could just look down and see what that camera was doing. Well, 15 years ago, I'd have one of these running off a battery, sitting on the floor at my feet monitoring that camera. So it's good to have a center marker because you can see where the center of the image is. Very important for properly lining up shots. You can configure, you can configure what the pins on the remote jack do, which is kind of cool. And then key inhibit, which just locks out these buttons, and when that's on, the little key inhibit light turns on. And there you go. I mean, there's not much to it. It's like any other of the monitors I've shown, right? Very, very versatile, universally great picture. You know what I have that you know what I should have plugged into this? We'll do that right now. Let me grab my Super Nintendo, and we'll plug it into this and just see how it looks. Well, here's what that looks like, and I can tell you right off the bat, it looks pretty cruddy compared to how it would look on a CRT PVM, and that's just normal for LCD televisions or monitors and old video games. They just don't go together like they go with CRT monitors. I have noticed an issue. See that right there? This thing has a big ghosting issue. with the video inputs. I wonder if it does that on all the inputs or if it's just the analog circuits. But obviously, there's some failing capacitors or something there with this ghosting that's going on. If I turn the Nintendo off, there you go, quite the ghosting. And actually, even if I bring up the menu for a few seconds and then turn it off, well, it's not doing it this time, but I've seen the menu ghost as well. If I switch to another input, oh, it's still there. Before switching to another input got rid of it. So this might be an issue with the LCD or the LCD driver. Actually, the fact that it's doing it between inputs pretty much rules out the actual video circuitry. So obviously there's something failing capacitors or something going on with the LCD driver, which is too bad. This is not something I've noticed on the one we're using at work. Something else I've noticed, there's no sound on this thing. I tested the headphone jack and it works, and I tested the audio out jack and it works, but there is no sound on the speaker. So obviously either the internal speaker or the amplifier for the speaker are bad. That's a shame. We have another one of these in storage. Maybe I'll just do the old switcheroo before this video's over. And hopefully the other one will A, not have that ghosting issue, and B, have working audio so we can test the audio output. But yeah, here's how that works. And of course, people mod old Nintendos to get 480p output. Or actually, people call it 240p output. I wonder if the signal's actually compatible with a monitor like this that accepts 480p. But either way, this is composite. If I had S-Video, it would look a lot better probably. But if I modded this thing to get progressive scan output that was compatible with this monitor, then it would look good. But until then, CRT PVMs reign supreme. But let's do our little comparison. I'll get a video source that we can, well, that's first of all better quality, and we can loop into this, the PVM-9L2, and the PVM-8045Q, and we will compare all three monitors side by side and see who has the best picture. Alright, it's a couple of weeks later. I just put this aside for a little while. I brought the other monitor we have up from storage, and blow me down, it's a different model. This is the LMD-9020. Same thing, but it has no SDI. You can see it's missing the SDI button. And the component input is standard definition only. Other than that, it's the same monitor. LCD panel has the same resolution. I remember when we were using this, you can see it's in this rack mount enclosure. There's actually room to put a second one in. We used this. It was mounted in a rack. When we were still broadcasting in standard definition, we used this in the server room to monitor our final feed before it went into the transmitter and into the cable and fiber modulators. Let me get the monitor itself out of this rack enclosure. There they are together. They look exactly the same, but one big difference. We got good sound on this one. That's all the way up. It's not terribly loud. There's a bit of a high frequency ringing to it, but it sounds just fine for what a PVM is supposed to be. I mean, I think most professional users of these, a PVM really doesn't need sound. You can see they both ghost as well. They provide sound as pretty much a courtesy, but I know in the broadcast world, you're just using these to view a picture. If you want to listen to sound, you'll probably do that through your mixer, through its control room output. You know, it's funny, there's a pretty popular YouTuber, way bigger than me, who deals with repairing broadcast equipment, VTRs and the like. And one time he did a video about a Sony PVM, And he said, I can't believe this PVM doesn't have stereo sound. Why would you make a professional video monitor and it doesn't have stereo sound? And I commented and I said I don't know of any PVM that has stereo sound, because PVMs really don't need sound at all. You're not using them for sound. And he went off on me and said, of course it should have stereo sound, blah blah. It's no. PVMs, I think most users of PVMs don't even use the sound on them, period. They certainly don't need stereo sound. You're using a piece of audio monitoring equipment for that. This is supposed to be video monitoring equipment. The sound is pretty much just a bonus. But yeah, they look good. Let me get the video camera just to put a white video signal through them, and I wonder how the right now it looks pretty good. Of course, you can't really tell with the Super Nintendo because it doesn't fill the whole screen. But I'm curious how the discoloration around the edge is on this one. And if I put white video through them, this 9020 appears to have even worse discoloration around the edge of the screen than the 9030 has. So, too bad. Just a reality with a lot of LCD displays, I suppose. Alright, this is the first test in our comparison. 2 CRT PVMs and an LCD PVM. So I've got the LMD-9020 hooked up. This is the PVM 9L2, and this is the PVM 8045Q. This PVM 9L2 has a standard resolution tube. It's rated for 250 TV lines of resolution. The 8045Q has the higher resolution HR Trinitron tube. It's rated for, I believe, 450 lines of resolution. And this LCD PVM has a 640 by 480 pixel LCD panel, which when you do the math, that comes out to an equivalent of 360 lines of resolution. So we've got three different resolutions here: lowest, higher, and highest. So in our first test here, well, first of all, I noticed something quite striking and odd. Now, I'm only taping this video in 30 frames per second, so you'll have to just take my word for it, but Super Nintendo's obviously putting out a 480i signal, and the motion of Mario and Yoshi going along there, it's got smooth 60 field per second motion, and that's evident on both of these CRT monitors. But the LCD monitor, it only, and I didn't notice this till I had all three monitors side by side, but the LCD monitor, the motion going on here is only 30 frames. It only looks like 30 frames per second, if not less. It almost looks like 24 frames per second. And I'm not sure why, because we have one of these in the edit suite at the station that we're still using, and we feed a 480i signal into it, and you get the smooth 60 field per second motion. But I'm not sure why this monitor, and both of these LCD monitors here, the Super Nintendo just doesn't look great. Is it because it's a Super Nintendo? Is there like intelligent circuitry inside this monitor that's somehow discarding some of the fields of video because it detects that it's like actually a 240p output being converted to 480i within the Nintendo? I'm not sure, but the end result is we don't have smooth motion here. We do have smooth motion here, and that's very interesting. As far as picture quality goes, no contest. The 8045Q with its HR Trinitron tube, very sharp, very clear picture. The PVM 9L2, not quite as sharp and clear. It looks more like a standard small consumer television set. And then the LCD PVM, you know, it's got a sharp picture, but old video game consoles, especially over composite, it just doesn't look that great on the monitor. You can see some aliasing going on, and it's kind of jagged looking, you know, compared to the CRT monitors. If I turn the aperture way down, I mean, it helps that out a little bit, but now everything else looks a little bit fuzzy. But yeah, as far as a composite vintage video game console is concerned, both the CRT monitors take it, and of course the HR Trinitron monitor is the best. Oh, and as for the sound, by far the 8045Q also has the best sound of the bunch. That's halfway up, so it's very loud. But kind of lacking in the high end. The 9L2, there's kind of better definition to the sound. It sounds less like it would. The 8045Q kind of sounds like what a small, cheap television set would sound like. This one sounds a bit better. There's just a bit better definition to the sound. But it's lacking in the bass, first of all. So it kind of trades bass for better clarity, but also it doesn't get nearly as loud. That's all the way up. That's all the way up, so this guy really doesn't get loud. And then the LMD, also very lacking in the low end. It gets a bit louder than the 9L2, not as loud as the 8045Q, and there's also some distortion when you really crank the volume. I would say if you're looking to use one of these for use like video gaming where you do want sound, the 8045Q is the winner there. Okay, I am generating a signal using a very cool piece of equipment that I haven't shown on video yet, but I will show it hopefully in a video in the very near future. But for now, it's a secret. All you need to know is that it's generating the lovely pattern you see on the screens, and it's doing so through SDI. And this piece of equipment only has an SDI output, which is fine because these two monitors are SDI. This one's just being looped from this one. But the 8045Q does not have SDI. So I'm using another piece of equipment that I got recently, which is coming in very handy. It's a Leech CDC 3501 bidirectional SDI to component and component to SDI converter. So I'm also running SDI into this, and it's outputting component, which I'm running into this. And it should be an even playing field because SDI is also a component signal. It's just a digital form of it. So what I'm finding here's the PVM 9L2, the lower resolution of the CRT PVMs. And here's the PVM 8045Q, and once again the picture is definitely sharper on the 8045Q. You can more easily see the beveling of the edges on these red, green, and blue squares. And the text is a little bit clearer. Go back to this one, you can clearly see the phosphor dots. So the text is rendered a little bit sharper. So definitely an improvement on this versus this. But an SDI signal is where the LCD monitor really shines. This looks really, really good. And in my opinion, this looks as good, if not better, than the HR Trinitron PVM. Once again, fine details like the if I can get in focus here, like the beveling on the edges of the colored panels, really nicely defined. And the text, the text is actually, I think, even better defined than it is on the 8045Q. There's the 8045Q. There's the LCD PVM. The LCD PVM seems to have finer... It's interesting because if you do the mathematically, this is rated, or not rated, but mathematically this should have an equivalent resolution of 360 TV lines, and this has a specified resolution of 450 TV lines, but the actual picture elements look a lot finer and higher resolution on the LCD PVM. How close can I get here? So there's the LCD PVM. And there's the 8045Q. And I'll go back to the... I would say this and the 8045Q in terms of actual, like, dots on the screen, I would say they're about evenly matched, even though mathematically this should have less resolution. And of course, the resolution of a given monitor, of a CRT monitor, is not just defined by how fine and how small the picture elements are, the phosphor dots on the screen. It's also in the circuitry as well. But yeah, with an SDI signal, this thing really shines, and I think overall it's as good, if not better, than the 8045Q. But yeah, really interesting to see. I mean, all three of these are just really fantastic monitors, but it's really nice to see how well an LCD monitor can hold its own in the standard definition world versus a very good, very high resolution CRT monitor. So there you go. And for the third and final test, I have a Windows PC running into all three of these monitors. And we'll see how legible stuff like icons on the desktop are. And this is now possible with yet another new piece of equipment I got my hands on recently. An Extron VSC500 video scan converter. Now, you may know that in the recent times when I've began doing direct video captures of computers whenever it's reasonable to do, I use a box made by Kramer that takes a VGA output and converts it to either composite or S-video, and it does an okay job for what it is. This guy is gonna be very nice and very useful because in addition to composite and S-video, this thing outputs component, so I'll be able to get a higher quality capture from this box. We used this in the control room at the station. It took a VGA output from a laptop, the laptop that controls our teleprompter, that runs the teleprompter software, and it converted it to composite, which we sent out to our teleprompter. We recently installed a new teleprompter. It's SDI, so now we're using an HDMI to SDI converter with that same laptop, and we can use the same cable, and now it's carrying SDI, which runs into the new prompter monitor that we installed. So now I've got this guy, and it should be very useful. So this guy outputs components, so now I'm using this leech converter in the other direction. It's converting the component to SDI for these two monitors, and then the component loop outputs go into this monitor, and it took every BNC cable I have in my possession to connect all these monitors. If you want to take a look back here, that's what all of the cables looks like. Welcome to television. So how does it look? Well, the PVM-9L2 with its lower resolution display, I mean, it's no contest compared to either of these other two monitors. So here's the higher resolution PVM-8045Q. This is 1024 by 768 resolution. And then if we look up at this guy, now on camera, this guy actually looks, I think, even more legible than the PVM-8045Q. Yeah, on camera it looks even more legible. But to my eyes, I would say they are about the same. So once again, the LCD monitor holds its own against a HR Trinitron CRT monitor. Give you one last look. There you go. Well guys, that's all there is to show of the Sony LMD-9020 and LMD-9030 LCD professional video monitors from the mid to late 2000s. I found out in the middle of filming this video that I found a Sony brochure. Their LCD professional video monitors were called the Luma series. The CRT ones were of course called Trinitron, the LCD ones were called Luma, so there you go. But I've had a blast showing these to you guys and putting them through their paces and comparing them to the Trinitron PVMs. I did not expect these to hold their own as much as they do. They are an excellent monitor. Now, if you're doing something like playing vintage video games, or you're looking at like you're playing VHS movies through them or something, a CRT PVM is gonna be a better experience. But if you're doing stuff like using broadcast equipment that outputs component or SDI, these really hold their own against the CRT PVMs, and they're nicer in a lot of ways. They're a lot lighter. They don't have the 15 kilohertz whine. And they have all the outputs. They have component and SDI, as well as S-video and composite all in one box, or at least the 9030 and 9050 do. And the 9030 can take a 720p or 1080i signal through its component input, so it's even HD capable. Very, very cool. I'd really like to find an LMD-9050, the version that has the higher resolution 1024 by 768 panel. That may never happen, but it would be very cool if I did. But it's been just a blast showing you guys these. I feel like eventually I'll have shown you absolutely everything that you need to know and need to have to start your own TV station. At least a standard definition one anyway. I'll keep this 9030 around, even though it's got bad audio. I'm never going to use it for audio. I'm actually going to put this right to use, and it'll help me demonstrate some other equipment that I'll be showing you guys in the future. It'll certainly just be a lot easier to move around than a CRT PVM. As for the 9020, I think I'm going to find a box and throw this guy up on eBay. We're never going to use it again. And my higher up expressed an interest in perhaps selling this and some other equipment we have. So you may find this on my eBay page. If I do list it on eBay, I will I'll post something in my YouTube channel community tab thing, and I'll make a post on my Mastodon page as well. But there you go. Thank you so much for watching. I do hope you enjoyed, and I will see you in the next video.